She was at the back of the line, wearing old, worn-out boots and a faded uniform without any badges. Everyone thought she was a janitor who accidentally ended up on the range. When Lena Park asked for the black Talon, everyone in the training yard started laughing and said, "Give her a broom instead." A soldier shouted, but then a helicopter landed. 3 people in black came out, holding a box with a claw symbol on it. When the main officer seriously said, "Welcome back, Commander Ghost Eye," everyone in the yard stopped moving and stared. Lena's hands were steady, but her chest felt tight, as if someone was holding her heart. 3 years ago, she left behind a life that hurt her more than the marks on her body. At 25, she was like a ghost, quietly going through tasks where people only talked about her in hushed tones, and no one knew what she looked like. Operation Falcon Down was her final effort. One shot ended a big problem, but it took more from her than she could ever describe. She had looked at too many people through her scope and watched too many lives disappear. So she chose to live a quiet life where no one recognized her and she could stay out of sight. While she stood in the dusty yard at Langford Training Camp, listening to the laughter around her, she felt the past trying to pull her back, as if her boots were stuck on the gravel. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't have to. Their voices held all the criticism she had heard before, making her feel rejected. The harshness that comes out when people believe they know everything about you. The supply soldier was annoyed. Callahan leaned over the counter, grinning widely and showing his crooked teeth. He was thin with a short haircut that looked very pointed and had eyes that sparkled with the happiness of putting someone down. "You think you're getting a gun?" he said loudly so everyone could hear. The new team members changed their Snickers building quickly, like a wave. A tall man with a muscular build, wearing a shiny gold chain around his neck, stepped forward. His name tag said, Torres. He crossed his arms and spoke in a sarcastic tone. "The supply depot is over there, honey. You're in the wrong queue." Callahan laughed and threw a rag onto the counter like it was part of the act. "Sure, give her a broom instead. That works better." The crowd cheered, leaning back and clapping their hands. The atmosphere became tense as everyone seemed ready to criticize each other. Lena didn't move. She nodded once, pressed her lips together, and took a step back. She touched her old jacket and adjusted it a bit, as if trying to make the moment feel better. A short distance away, a group of new recruits stood, looking at Lena. As she walked away, one of the soldiers, who was tall and always hunched over, called Private. Gorman shouted, "Hey, be careful not to trip on your boots." They seem like they're ready to quit. The group started laughing loudly, some hitting their knees and others teasing each other like it was the funniest thing ever. Lena stopped and turned her back to them. She squeezed her hands into fists for a moment, then relaxed them. She turned her head slightly to look at Gorman, keeping her eyes on him without blinking. Gorman's smile faded, and he looked like he was caught doing something wrong. She didn't say anything, just looked at him for a bit longer than felt easy, then kept going. The group went quiet, their confidence fading quickly like a flat tire. Gorman quietly said something, but it didn't have the same harshness as before. Lena's boots made a crunching sound on the stones. Each step was careful, as if she was leaving a mark on the ground. Hey, if you like this story, take a moment to check your phone. Enjoy this video, write a comment below, and press the subscribe button. It's very important to share stories like Lena's about people who are laughed at but still stay strong. Okay, let's continue. The laughter followed her like a shadow as she walked to the barracks. The new soldiers quietly talked among themselves as she walked by. They looked at her simple clothes and her black hair that hung down over her shoulders. She didn't wear makeup because she didn't need it. Her face had deep brown eyes that seemed to look right into you. A calm kind of beauty that didn't demand attention, but drew you in if you stared for a while. But it didn't seem like a long time to them. She was simply a woman who felt out of place, the person who went to the wrong line. By dinner, the message was full of excitement. I heard she tried to get an M for someone to join, he said, his voice loud above the noise of the trays. Who does she think she is? Another woman with a tight ponytail and a smile that didn't seem genuine moved closer. Her name tag said, Pavit Ellis, probably just a clerk who got confused, she said, sounding annoyed. Check out her shoes. Lena sat by herself at a table in the corner, with a tray that had a piece of bread and a little bit of mashed potatoes. She stopped eating when she heard Ellis's voice, but she didn't look up. She took a slow bite, keeping her jaw still and her eyes focused on her food. Later that evening, Lena stood outside the barracks as the sky turned a deep purple while the sun was setting. A group of new soldiers had come together by the flagpole, talking loudly in the cool air. Ellis was there talking to everyone, her shiny nails gleaming as she waved her hands. I bet she's never even touched a real gun, she said, her voice very angry. Torres nodded while leaning on a post, and his gold chain sparkled in the fading light. Yeah, it's probably just someone pretending to be a soldier. Lena was close enough to listen, but not close enough to be seen. She blended into the darkening surroundings. She moved her weight around, and her hand touched the dog tag in her pocket. Her face stayed the same, but her fingers gripped the tag harder, and the metal pressed into her hand. A younger new member, unsure, spoke up. Maybe she has some experience. Ellis laughed, and it sounded sharp like glass breaking. Training. She seems like she should be a janitor. Lena's lips pressed together, and she turned away, her boots making no sound on the grass as she left their words hanging in the quiet. The next morning, the technical check was a usual process. Every new soldier had to take apart and put back together a weapon to show they could use it. The teacher, Sergeant Malone, was a man in his 40s who had a tough appearance and little patience. His clipboard was very important to him, and he shouted commands like he had always done it. When it was Lena's turn, he looked at her for just a moment. Park correctly. Let's hurry up, he said, pushing an M4 across the table. The room was filled with new people standing by the walls, and some sitting on boxes, all waiting for her to make a mistake. Lena put her hands on the rifle carefully and slowly. Then she shut her eyes. The room was silent, and everyone felt excited. Her fingers moved as if they were very familiar with the weapon. Pinbolt spring. Each part placed carefully. 19 seconds later, it was fixed again. Every screw is in the right spot. She opened her eyes. Malone's pen stopped in the air. Did you work with weapons technology? He asked quietly, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. Lena looked at him, and he looked back at her calmly. No, I just used it daily. The room didn't stay quiet for long. As Lena moved away from the table, Torres leaned towards Gorman and spoke loudly enough for others to hear. I bet she just learned the manual by heart to seem impressive, he said, his smile turning into a scowl. A few new soldiers laughed, but others felt uneasy and looked nervously at Lena. She didn't say anything, just cleaned her hands on her jacket and walked to the door. As she walked by a crate, it shook because of a recruit's weight and made a loud noise. Lena quickly reached out to catch it before it could fall, her quick reflexes making everyone in the room stop. The new person, a nervous kid with scars from acne, quietly said, "Thank you." Lena nodded and kept walking without changing her face. Torres stopped smiling and started nervously playing with his chain. Malone watched her leave, forgetting about his clipboard. His jaw was clenched, as if he had witnessed something he couldn't understand. The murmurs began again, but this time they sounded different. Less teasing, more uncomfortable. "No chance. She's just a beginner," a new soldier said quietly. "I think she's not telling the truth," Torres said, but his voice didn't sound as sure as before. Lena left before hearing anything else. She walked out, her boots making noise on the floor, leaving the room filled with its own questions. Outside, the air was fresh and chilly, the kind of autumn morning that makes you feel a sharp coolness in your breath. She paused at a bench and reached into her pocket to feel an old dog tag. It didn't belong to her. It used to belong to a friend, a sniper she had trained with a long time ago, who got lost during a mission that went bad. The metal felt smooth from her, touching it a lot, reminding her of why she had left that life behind. She held it for a moment, ran her thumb over the name carved into it, then put it away and continued on. At the side of the camp, Lena discovered a calm place by the storage sheds where the noise from generators covered up the talking. She sat on a box with her hands on her knees, looking at the distant trees where they touched the sky. A maintenance worker, an older man with dirty hands, stopped nearby to wipe his forehead. He looked at her and noticed her old uniform. "You seem out of place here," he said. Not mean, just asking out of curiosity. Lena's lips moved a little, but it wasn't really a smile. "I hear that a lot," she said in a gentle but clear voice. The man nodded as if he knew more than he showed and gave her a bottle of water from his cooler. She picked it up, her fingers touching the cold plastic, and nodded in response. He walked away whistling gently, leaving her in silence. She opened the bottle, took a drink, and felt the coolness help her relax, while she kept looking at the horizon. The days after were stressful. The camp was a close community, and everyone quickly heard about what Lena did. The new recruits saw her in a different way now. Some were curious about her, while others felt angry. During breakfast, she heard Torres talking to Ellis. "Maybe it was just a lucky chance," he said, speaking so everyone could hear. "Anyone can have good luck sometimes." Ellis tapped her tray with her nails. "Yeah, I bet she can't shoot well at all." Lena didn't say anything. She just stirred her coffee, making a soft noise with the spoon on the mug. But her shoulders tensed for a moment, and she put the spoon down a bit harder than she intended. Across the room, a young new member, a thin boy with glasses, looked at her. His name tag said, "Be Nguyen." He didn't speak, but his eyes were focused on her, as if he was trying to understand her. Lena saw him but didn't say anything to him. She drank her coffee and walked away, leaving the noise of the mess hall behind her. In the morning, the new recruits were in a classroom. The room smelled strongly of old coffee and sweat. Malone was at the front talking about the rules for using the range, but everyone kept looking at Lena, who was sitting by herself in the back. Ellis leaned closer to the person next to her and whispered sharply, "Look at her sitting there like she's important. She probably thinks she's really cool now." The new recruit, a woman with wide shoulders and a nervous laugh, giggled and looked over at Lena. Lena sat with her hands in her lap and her eyes on Malone, but her fingers moved a little, showing that she had heard him. Nongu Yen, who was sitting a few rows in front, turned his head, and the light reflected off his glasses. He didn't laugh or participate. Instead, he took out a notebook from his bag and quickly wrote something down with his pen. When the meeting was over, he left the notebook open on his chair, showing one word. "That's enough." Lena walked by, noticed her, and stopped for a moment before continuing. The shooting practice started a week later. The shooting area was a big stretch of dirt with targets, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder and a sense of tension. Lena was the last person in line again. No one wanted to team up with her, not after the M4 event. PV Lucas Reed, the best shooter in the unit, was very noticeable. He was very charming, had a smile that could sell anything, and carried himself confidently. "Anyone who teams up with her is sure to win easily," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. The others laughed, but now it felt awkward, as if they were uncertain. Malone decided to team up Lucas with Lena anyway. Lucas smiled widely and leaned in closer. "Don't worry, I act quickly, but I never hurt anyone." Lena smiled a little, but it didn't make her eyes happy. She changed how she stood, kept her hands relaxed by her sides, and didn't say anything. Before the drill started, a strong wind blew dust around the area, causing papers from a nearby table to fly everywhere. The new soldiers rushed to get them, but Lena was quicker. She caught a flying paper in the air. It was a target log with notes written on it. She gave it to Malone silently, her movements careful and almost too fast. The new soldiers nearby stopped moving, staring with wide eyes as if they had just seen something amazing. Lucas's smile faded, and his hand moved nervously towards his gun. Malone grabbed the paper, frowned, and said quietly, "Thanks, Park." Lena nodded and moved back to her place, leaving light marks in the dust with her boots. The moment went by, but it stayed in the air, making the crowd feel uncomfortable. Lucas fixed his hat, clenched his jaw, turned away, and quietly said something to Torres that no one heard. When it was her turn, the place was very quiet. 5 goals, 5 tries. Lena lifted the rifle smoothly, like water moving over rocks. Each shot hit the middle, and the sounds echoed across the field. Next was Lucas. His jaw was tense, and his hands were steady, but not quite steady enough. He missed 2 shots, and the bullets hit the ground far away from the target. The crowd didn't cheer for him like they normally did. Malone moved closer, squinting his eyes and speaking a little sharply because he was curious. "What would happen if we covered your eyes?" he asked, partly daring him and partly trying to see how he would react. A new member or a new person joining a group or team. Gave a piece of cloth, Lena didn't think twice. She tied it over her eyes, keeping her finger steady. The wind got stronger, making the trees move and bringing a light smell of pine. She turned her head and listened. 5 more tries. 5 more targets hit perfectly. When she took off the blindfold, Malone's face was very pale. "Who are you?" he asked in a very quiet voice. Lena gave him the rifle and walked away calmly. As she walked out of the area, a small group moved aside to let her pass, quietly talking among themselves. Nguyen stood to the side, and his glasses were getting a bit foggy from the cold. He didn't say anything, and just watched her walk by with his hands in his pockets. Lena glanced at him and saw him give a tiny nod that was hard to notice. She didn't nod in reply, but she walked a little slower for a moment, pausing with her boots on the dirt. Torres whispered to Ellis behind her, "I bet she has a trick hidden away." Ellis made a snorting sound, her voice quiet but full of anger. "Trick she's just enjoying the attention." Lena's hand touched her pocket where the dog tag was, and she kept her fingers there, pressing the metal against her skin. She kept walking, her dark shape clear against the sunset, letting their words drift away in the breeze. The camp changed after that. The whispers weren't just talk. Now they were questions. Who was she? Why was she here? Nguyen began to move closer to her in the dining area. Just looking, not speaking. Once, he secretly added another apple to her tray when he thought she couldn't see him. Lena saw it but didn't say anything. She picked up the apple, feeling its bruised skin, and put it in her pocket. Later, when she was alone in her bed, she used a small knife to slice it up. She ate slowly, looking at the wall. The knife was old, and its handle was used a lot. It was the kind of knife you carry when you've seen too many bad things to trust others. She didn't consider the distance, and didn't pay attention to Malone's question. But her hands moved more slowly than normal, like they were holding something heavy. Late at night, the new trainees were split into pairs to practice fighting each other under bright lights that buzzed loudly. Lena was paired up to practice with a strong recruit named Pifford. Malone, who was not related to the teacher, was a guy with a muscular build like a boxer and a laugh that was rough and gravelly. "Take it easy on me." "Okay," he said in a teasing voice while cracking his knuckles. The others stood in a loose circle, their faces brightened by the strong light. Malone jumped forward, moving clumsily but with a lot of weight, thinking he would easily win. Lena moved around her body fluid as if she were gliding through water. She didn't fight back. She just avoided his hits. Her hands were gentle but accurate. Some people in the crowd cheered for Malone, while others looked at Lena with worry. After a minute, Malone was breathing hard and his face was red. Lena wasn't even tired. She took a step back, looked right at him and asked, "Are you finished?" Everyone around them fell silent. Malone's laugh stopped abruptly. He nodded and wiped his forehead as the drill finished. Lena walked away, her shadow stretching out long under the lights. The camp leader, Lee Tur, called Hargrove, was a man who really liked to have things organized. His office had sharp lines and shiny surfaces, with a metal-framed desk and a flag that looked brand new and hadn't been blown by the wind. That afternoon, he took out Lena's file and noticed that many pages were strangely empty. No fighting group, no rank, just moved to logistics without any reasons given. He leaned back in his chair and frowned more. "This doesn't make sense," he said to his assistant, an anxious young man who nodded too fast. The news spread quickly. By evening, the place was lively. No special documents. Jenkins said, obviously annoyed, "He's probably just inventing stories." He was very loud. He was the type of guy who showed his insecurity openly and was always ready to argue or pick a fight. Ellis said some fun things about the clock, her pointy nails clicking on the tray, just random lucky plays. No documents mean she doesn't have an identity. Hargrove listened and made a phone call. "Take away her weapon," he said sharply. Lena didn't fight back when they took the gun. She took out the magazine, put the gun down, and walked away, her boots making noise in the silence. That night, Lena sat on her bed with her hands resting on her legs. The barracks were quiet because the other recruits were playing cards in the common room. She took the dog tag out of her pocket and held it up to the low light. The name on it was hard to read now because it had faded after many years of being touched by her. She recalled the day when a medic gave it to her in a field hospital, where the air was heavy with the smell of cleaning products and blood. Her friend had been laughing only a few hours ago when she talked about a restaurant back home with amazing pie. Lena clenched her jaw and put the tag away. She didn't sleep much that night. She just lay there looking at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the barracks around her. The next morning, a regular check went badly. Harrow got help from a nervous officer named Lutt. Bryce chose to show everyone what Lena's bunk looked like. He stood by her tidy bed, holding a clipboard that wobbled a little as he pointed at her stuff. "This park is a mess," he said loudly so everyone in the barracks could hear. "You call this the military standard." The other recruits stood nearby, laughing, knowing there was trouble. Bryce kicked her boots and one slid across the floor. "These are shameful." Lena stood still and focused. Her face showed no expression, but her hands were held tightly behind her back, making her knuckles turn pale. Gwen, who was standing close by, jumped a little but didn't speak. Bryce continued walking and threw her neatly folded jacket on the floor. "Maybe you should be in charge of the laundry," he said with a smile. Lena leaned down, picked up the boot and jacket, and carefully put them back where they belonged. "Is there anything else, sir?" she asked in a flat voice that sounded harsh. Bryce's smile faded, and he walked off, grumbling about discipline. The phone in Hargrove's office rang at midnight. The voice on the other end was quick and worried. "Is Lena Park there?" Hargrove paused, gripping the phone tightly. "Yes, but we don't know who she truly is." A voice interrupted him. "She's Ghost Eye, the only agent who finished Operation Falcon Down. If she asks for a gun, don't ask her why. Give her the Black Talon." Hargrove gasped. General Derrick was not someone who exaggerated. He hung up the phone, looking pale, and called Malone in. "Share the news," he said softly. But things never stay silent in a camp. By morning, the rumors spread quickly. "Stare at her like a ghost." Jenkins laughed and sprayed his coffee in the cafeteria. "She looks like my mom when she goes to buy food." Lucas was in a bad situation. He trapped Lena with 2 friends. They were speaking loudly and standing in a tough way. "That's the funniest thing I've ever heard." Someone said, "There's a short, strong man with a shaved head named Pjov." Lena took it, looked at him for a short moment, and nodded. She finished cleaning, got up, and walked out, leaving the tray on the table. Carter's smile disappeared, and he started to fidget as everyone in the room looked at him. The helicopter arrived at sunset the next day. The camp was very quiet, and it felt like everyone was waiting for something to happen. 3 agents in black walked out. No names or titles, just a metal box with a scratch on it. The main worker, a woman with a scar on her jaw, looked over the crowd. "Lena Park," she said, breaking the silence. Lena moved ahead, and her boots made a crunching sound on the gravel. The worker gave her the case in a serious and respectful way. "Welcome back, Commander Ghost Eye," she said, giving a small bow. The camp stopped moving. Jenkins let his cigarette fall, and the hot tip sizzled when it hit the ground. Lucas's face relaxed, and his arms dropped to his sides. Lena opened the case and touched the black rifle, which looked sharp and special, like it could easily take someone's life. She shut it again, still looking the same, and nodded to the workers. They left without saying anything else, and the sound of the helicopter's blades disappeared into the night. The news about the helicopter got around quicker than the gossip. By breakfast, the message had everyone feeling amazed and unsure. A group of new soldiers near Lena's table spoke quietly, but you could still hear them. "No chance." "She's the ghost I got," said a thin woman with a scar on her face. "It must be wrong." Jenkins heard and spoke up loudly. "Error. She's fooling all of us." They probably paid someone to pretend to do that trick. Lena was sitting at her regular table, and her tray had some food left on it. She stopped eating and held her fork above her plate for a moment before putting it down carefully. Without looking up, she said, "You say a lot for someone who doesn't understand." The room got quiet, and Jennings' face turned red. He opened his mouth, then shut it, and his hands turned into fists. Lena grabbed her fork again, took a bite, and continued eating calmly, easing the tension in the room. Hargrove acted quickly. He scheduled a public training exercise for the next morning, an event that attracted all the soldiers at the base. 500 men and women came together in the field, their whispers sounding like noise. Lena was the main focus, whether she wanted to be or not. Hargrove stood on a platform, speaking loudly. "Let's find out if her skills are genuine." Lucas was in the front row with his arms crossed and a smile on his face. "No lucky tricks this time," he said, so that she could hear him. Lena didn't pay attention to him. She walked up to the line, holding the Black Talon. "Aim for number 9 at 1,800 meters." She spoke softly but clearly. Harov lifted one eyebrow with his bare hand. Lena agreed. The crowd moved a bit, some leaning in closer, while others laughed. 1,800 meters is a distance that most snipers wouldn't even think about hitting without a special sight or someone helping them. A great day. The wind was strong, and the air was chilly. Lena lifted the gun. Right before she took the shot, a confident guy in the crowd named Pivot, who had a loud voice. Daniel yelled, "I bet she misses it and feels sad about it." The crowd giggled, with some people laughing and others looking at Lena with worry. She didn't move, but her fingers shifted on the black claw, and she held on a little tighter for a moment. Gu Yen stood close by, gritting his teeth with his hands deep in his pockets. Lena's eyes moved to the target. She breathed calmly, and her body was relaxed. The wind blew loudly, blowing dust into the eyes of the people watching. She breathed out slowly, let her shoulders relax, and pressed the trigger. The sound was a quiet, soft growl. The target almost 2 kilometers away broke apart. The fast camera focused in and showed the image on a screen for everyone to look at. The bullet hit the signature on a brass badge attached to the target, leaving a mark the size of a dime. The crowd was quiet, a quiet that was almost painful to hear. Harov got up slowly, holding onto the edge of the platform with his hands. He said in a quiet voice that anyone who didn't believe her should think about leaving. Lena put down the rifle, looked relaxed, and stared at the distant line where the sky meets the land. She didn't look at Lucas or Jenkins. She put down the black Talon and walked away from the field. The results happened fast. Jenkins was gone by the end of the week. He was moved to a desk job in a remote place without any explanation. Lucas's name became popular on X, but for negative reasons. Someone shared a video of his stunt, and the comments were very critical. The hashtag #ArrogantSoldierGetsHumbled was very popular for several days. Ellis lost her partnership with a company that sells military equipment. It turns out they didn't like how she acted either. It wasn't Lena's fault. She didn't have to do anything. The truth spread easily, like ripples in a pond. She stayed by herself, ate alone, and practiced. By herself, her boots were still coming apart, and her uniform was still faded. But now, when she walked around the camp, the talking quieted down. People looked at her, not with hate, but with something different. Respect means showing kindness and consideration for others. Fear can be both. Where are you watching from? Please leave a comment below and follow me to share my journey through sadness, being hurt by someone, and healing.